Thank you for listening to Stories at Pink Meow Meow Audio. Hope you enjoy the story. The city was submerged in a misty rain. The road was dimly lit, and drops of water were pattering on the roof of the car. The monotonous noise makes people's hearts empty. Inside the black Cypress sedan speeding down the highway, the man sitting in the passenger seat closed his eyes, his fingers gently caressing the exquisite ring box placed in the palm of his hand. A simple, smooth ring with the name Ton Noan engraved on the inside. Luke Ken-hwai rarely does anything impulsive. He is a person who lives like a precisely programmed machine, cold, rational, calculating every step. But tonight he broke it all. Because of her. Just because of Miss Luck. It was raining heavily, or the assistant worriedly spoke up. His voice was low, carrying an unshakable will. The assistant did not dare say anything more, just silently drove, silently praying to God not to let any evil play out on this rainy night. The car glided away, the streetlights falling like ghostly streaks of light. Luke Ken-hwai tilted his head to look out the window. A vague feeling of unease was quietly rising in his heart, but he tried to force himself to ignore it. Just need to meet her. Just need to give her this ring. All the things he has missed, all the things he has kept hidden for so many years will be said. I want to live true to my heart for once. Boom. The screeching of brakes was deafening. A container truck lost control like a mad beast and charged straight towards them. Assistant Lee screamed, his whole body reflexively stepped on the brakes, but it was all too late. In just a moment, the world before their eyes turned into a pitch-black sea of night, cold and chilling. Luke Ken-hwai's consciousness was wavering. Blood was running warmly down his temples. In the blur, he saw Ton Noan's face, her eyes, her smile, her voice, every fragment of memory that came back pierced through the pain. He clutched the ring box, his fingers trembling. Ton Noan, don't leave me. That was his last thought before darkness swallowed him. News of the accident spread like wildfire. The CEO of Look T is seriously injured, in a deep coma, in critical condition, and it is unclear whether he will wake up. The whole city was shaken, rivals secretly rejoiced, allies were anxious. The stock market fell freely. But that news was meaningless to Ton Noan. She just knew she was standing frozen outside the emergency room, the cold rain soaking into her skin, her heart empty like an empty shell. They had been married for 3 years, a consensual marriage, no love, no strings attached. He gave her status, she gave him freedom. During those 3 years, they were like two parallel lines, neither touching nor moving away from each other. Ton Noan once thought she could maintain such a relationship forever, cold and calm. But now when she saw him lying there, she felt her heart ache so much she couldn't breathe. The mechanical beeping sound rang out. Luke Ken-hwai, that cold and arrogant man, is now just a weak body struggling for life. Ton Noan bit her lip and walked over, sitting down next to the hospital bed. She took his hand, the hand that had once held tightly during negotiations, that had once coldly signed billion-dollar contracts, but was now cold and pitifully weak. "You have to wake up," she whispered, her voice choked. "I haven't even had time to give you the ring yet. It's like a miracle." At that moment, Luke Ken-hwai frowned slightly. Soo Noan immediately held her breath. He opened his eyes, his gaze was hazy and absent-minded, but he quickly caught her figure. Just a second later, he reached out and grabbed her wrist like a drowning person grabbing a life buoy. His voice was hoarse, trembling softly. "Don't go." The doctors and nurses around were stunned. The assistant also stood there like a husband. The Liu general they knew, the man who treated the world like trash, was now holding his wife's hand like a treasure. His eyes were red, his voice was trembling like a child about to be abandoned. Soo Noan was speechless. "Do you miss me?" she stuttered. Luke Ken-hwai squeezed her hand tighter. His eyes seemed to be able to see only her. He nodded decisively. "He doesn't remember anything. He only misses you." The room was silent as a sheet. The doctor performed an emergency exam. The preliminary results: traumatic brain injury, severe amnesia, serious. The ability to recover is unpredictable. But what surprised everyone the most was that, despite the memories of work, the past, friends, and even family all disappearing, only Ton Noan was still deeply engraved in his mind. In the midst of this cold, chaotic, ruined world, in Luke Ken-hwai's almost devastated heart, there is still only one bright light left. It's you. Just you. Ton Noan bowed her head, silently letting her tears fall onto the palms of their tightly clasped hands. Perhaps from the beginning they were not two parallel lines as she thought, but two pieces of a puzzle that were born to find each other, just waiting for the right moment to burst. VIP hospital special care area, top floor, soft yellow light spread across warm wooden floor. Ton Noan sat on the small sofa next to the hospital bed. Her heart was still filled with mixed emotions. The man on the bed, Luke Kenhwai, had already fallen asleep, his hand still tightly holding onto her finger, refusing to let go. Every time she moved slightly, even just pulling her hand back slightly, he immediately tightened his grip, afraid she would disappear in the blink of an eye. Ton Noan was both amused and annoyed. This was the first time after 3 years of marriage on paper that she felt the real temperature from his palm, warm, persistent, and surprisingly weak. The doctor pushed the door in and entered, cautiously as if afraid to disturb the strange atmosphere in the room. His condition has stabilized, but the middle-aged doctor pushed his glasses, his eyes troubled, afraid that a part of his memory has been lost forever. Ton Noan gently squeezed the doctor's hand and asked what he meant. The doctor coughed, as if he couldn't believe his own conclusion. Currently, in the memory of the patient, there is only her. Ton Noan was stunned, only remembered her in all his memories, the sharp negotiations, the powerful opponents, the bloody and sweaty business battles, all had disappeared, leaving only the image of a wife that he had been almost invisible to for the past 3 years. How is this possible? Doctor, could it be due to psychological shock from the accident? Assistant Lee asked cautiously. The doctor shook his head. It's possible. The human brain is very strange. Sometimes the deepest emotions will be engraved in the deepest place, overcoming all injuries. In other words, in Luke Kanhwai's heart, Ton Noan is the exception, the only one. That night, Ton Noan did not come home. She sat beside him all night, her hand still held tightly, unable to pull away. Actually, if she wanted to, she could have resolutely withdrawn her hand, but she didn't, and even gently clenched it as a silent compromise. The next morning, the gentle sunlight filtered through the white curtains, covering the room with a layer of warm yellow light. Luke Kanhwai woke up, opened his eyes and immediately looked around for her, his eyes like a lost puppy looking for its owner. When he saw her still sitting there, his eyes lit up immediately, as if he had just caught the last ray of hope in the midst of despair. Noan, Noan. His voice was hoarse and trembling. I'm hungry. Ton Noan. She was both amused and helpless. The domineering and cold CEO said, you can starve yourself for 3 days just to force the stock price to rock bottom, and now you're lying here weakly complaining about hunger to your wife. How cute do you want to be? Ton Noan rang the bell to call the nurse to bring porridge. She scooped up a spoon, blew on it, and brought it to his mouth. He did not move, just quietly looked at her, her eyes strangely obedient. Ton Noan was half crying, half laughing. Open his mouth. He immediately listened, obediently finishing the spoon of porridge she fed him, his face satisfied, like a cat that had just been fed. Just like that, spoon by spoon, she fed him. He looked at her intently. No one said anything, only the sound of the porcelain spoon touching the bowl rang out softly, gentle like a small melody in the peaceful morning. After breakfast, the doctor came for a general checkup. When he saw Ton Noan standing up and trying to move aside, Luke Kanhwai immediately pulled her hand back, squeezing it tightly, his eyes filled with caution, like a child afraid of having his candy stolen. Don't go anywhere. His voice was clearly sulky. Son Noan, it's possible that if anyone had ever witnessed his cold and murderous appearance in real life, they would definitely faint collectively upon seeing this scene. The doctor burst out laughing. Ho Lai Lai stood beside miserably, turning away, pretending to study the floor, not daring to look straight. Ton Noan had no choice but to coax her gently. I'll just stand here, I won't go anywhere. Luke Kanhwai only let go of his hand when he heard that, but his eyes were still glued to her, not leaving her every second. In the afternoon, a young nurse pushed a medicine cart into the room. While working, she accidentally glanced up at Ton Noan for a few seconds longer. Just a few seconds, but Luke Kanhwai's eyes immediately became sharp as a dagger. He narrowed his eyes. His face that was gentle when he looked at her a moment ago was now cold as ice. When the young nurse politely said, Madam, may I check Mr. Luke's temperature? Before Ton Noan could reply, Luke Kanhwai tilted his head, decisively avoiding the hand holding the thermometer. His voice was so cold it could freeze the room. "No need. Except for my wife, I don't let anyone touch it." The nurse trembled and withdrew her hand. Ta Noen choked. "You think you are a rare panda that needs to be preserved." But when her eyes met that determined gaze, her heart suddenly softened. She quietly took the thermometer and bent down to check it for him. Lu Kenhuai smiled with satisfaction. His big hand gently held her hand, his voice low. "As long as you're here, I'm not afraid of anything." That night, the doctor asked Ta Noen to go home and rest. She had just stood up and had not yet stepped out of the doorway when she heard a hoarse voice calling from behind. "Noen Noen, don't leave me." She turned back to see Lu Kenhuai sitting up, his face pale and full of panic. Under the pale yellow light, that tall and strong man was now like a small child, afraid of losing the only thing left in his life. Ta Noen sighed. She walked over, gently sat down next to him, and took his hand. "I'll just be gone for a bit. You go to sleep," she gently coaxed. Lu Kenhuai held her hand tightly, nodded obediently, but his eyes were still glued to her, not leaving her every second. Late at night, in his dream, he whispered, "Noen Noen, don't leave me, I only have you left." Ta Noen sat beside him, quietly stroking his hair, the emotions in her heart like small waves silently lapping at the shore, very light but very long-lasting. Third day after the accident. Early morning, soft sunlight falls on the glass window. Ta Noen was sitting by the hospital bed reading the documents the company brought with it. Lu Kenhuai half lay, half sat, his eyes glued to her like a magnet, not bothering to hide his obvious clinginess. The doctor said that after the accident, the patient's psychology may be slightly affected and he needs a close relative to stabilize his emotions. But the person close to her didn't need to guess. Of course, it was only her. Ta Noen sighed. For the past 3 days, no matter what she did or where she went, Lu Kenhuai followed her with his eyes, as if she was not careful, he would disappear from this world. "You can sleep a little longer," she gently coaxed without raising her head. "No," he answered briefly, his voice hoarse, his eyes staring at her like a puppy looking at its owner. Ta Noen had no choice but to ignore it and continue to focus on the documents. 10 minutes later, Ta Noen stood up and walked to the table to get a bottle of water. The distance was only a few steps, but Lu Kenhuai immediately tensed up and pushed himself up from the bed, almost pulled out the IV tube. Ta Noen startled and turned back, hurriedly walking forward. "What are you doing? Lie down." Lu Kenhuai frowned, his hand still holding her wrist, like a child afraid of being abandoned, not allowed to go that far anymore. "I can't stand it without you." Ta Noen paused. She looked at him, her face pale, her eyes panicked and uneasy. And for the first time in her life, she felt her heart soften to the point of no resistance. For the past 3 years, he has been cold as ice. For the past 3 years, she could only watch his back as it grew farther and farther, yet now he was so afraid of her. At noon, the assistant brought nutritious lunch. Ta Noen helped Lu Kenhuai eat each small spoonful. The atmosphere was so sweet that even the nurse on duty outside the door blushed and turned away. But before long, a small tsunami suddenly hit. The thing is, the assistant, out of old work habits, conveniently poured a glass of water and gave it to Ta Noen. It was simply pouring water, but in Lu Kenhuai's eyes, it was a first-degree crime. He immediately glared at his assistant. His cold gaze seemed to freeze the entire room. "Assistant Ta Noen, hello, universe." Ta Noen quickly took the glass of water and smiled. He was just being nice. But Lu Kenhuai didn't even look at the glass of water, just stared at her, his voice low and possessive. "Why be nice to me? Only you can take care of me." The assistant almost choked on his saliva. Ta Noen sat down on the chair, picked up the glass of water and took a small sip, half crying, half laughing. Someone said that when a CEO truly falls in love, his IQ will drop to negative levels, and it is indeed true. That afternoon, when the nurse came in to change the bandage, Ta Noen stood next to help. She bent down, her fingers accidentally brushing against Lu Kenhuai's wrist. Immediately, he shivered slightly, as if an electric current ran through him. His eyes darkened, his big hand tightly grasped her wrist, his voice hoarse. "Noen Noen, don't touch other people in front of me." The nurse in the room was beating her ear to ear. Ta Noen laughed. "Are you jealous?" Lu Kenhuai calmly nodded, neither denying nor explaining. His eyes were bright and clear, but contained a deep unease. "I don't want you to smile at other people. Just smile at him." Ta Noen's heart skipped a beat. He was bored and wondered where the cold and domineering President Luke was. Why, now, Mr. Luke is so spoiled. In the evening, the doctor checked her overall condition and gently reminded Ta Noen to go home and rest to avoid overexertion. She thought for a long time, finally nodded. Before leaving, she bent down to fix the blanket for him. Suddenly, he reached out and pulled her down. She lost her balance and fell face down into his arms.
"What are you doing?" Tonoin struggled, her face red. But Lu Kenhuai did not let go. He buried his face in her neck, his hoarse voice carrying a rare hint of coquetry. "I dreamed that you left me. I didn't like that dream at all. Don't let me go anywhere." Tonoin stiffened. A long while later, she heard steady breathing in her ear. He slept, but in his sleep, he still refused to let go. She sighed softly, lying still, letting him hold her like a treasure. That night, in a dream, Luke Kenhuai whispered to Tonoin, "You are my everything." But in the deepest corner of his subconscious, a strange image flashed by: a rainy night, an accident, a terrifying scream, and an unspoken promise. The head sleeping peacefully on Tonoin's shoulder slightly frowned. A vague uneasiness like a ghost was creeping into the sweet dream. The next morning, the sky was clear, the sunlight filtered through the curtains, deigning the entire hospital room a warm honey color. Tonoin woke up when she felt steady breathing by her ear. She opened her eyes and immediately met the starry eyes of the man opposite her. Luke Kenhuai still kept the same position from last night, one arm tightly hugging her waist, chin resting on her shoulder, as if he loosened his grip even a little, she would disappear from this world. "Have you been awake long?" Tonoin asked hoarsely. "Not long," he replied in a low voice, but his eyes sparkled like a petted animal. Actually, he woke up very early. All morning he just lay there looking at her. Every strand of her hair, every breath of hers he remembered in his heart, like a child first learning to feel this world. Tonoin gently left his arms and adjusted the corner of the blanket. "You must rest," she spoke gently, but Luke Kenhuai did not reply, only tilted his head to look at her, his deep eyes showing a rare hesitation. After a while, he asked hoarsely, Non, will you leave me in the future?" Non was stunned. His eyes, his expression, his voice were so sincere that people couldn't bear to joke with him. She pursed her lips, her voice soft like a sigh. "As long as you don't push me away, where can I go?" At that moment, it was as if a soft feather gently touched the bottom of Luke Kenhuai's heart. He pursed his lips and nodded vigorously, his eyes shining like a child receiving a gift he had long dreamed of. That morning, the atmosphere in the room was so sweet that it was irritating. Non fed him spoonfuls of food. Luke Kenhuai ate very well, occasionally looking up at her, his eyes sparkling as if he was earning bonus points. After eating, he leaned closer to her and asked in a low voice, "Can you reward me with a hug?" Non, someone once said that a domineering CEO is cold and difficult to approach. How did you become a CEO who is crazy about his wife? Non was both laughing and crying. She lightly flicked him, demanding a reward for eating porridge. Who could please him? Luke Kenhuai held his forehead, pretending to be upset, but his mouth was smiling broadly. Assistant Lee stood outside the door, looking in, almost choking on his saliva. Where did the cold and cruel CEO from before go? In front of his wife, he turned into a puppy. In the afternoon, the doctor announced that Luke Kenhuai should prepare to walk again soon for rehabilitation. Non helped him down from the bed, put her hand on his shoulder, gently guided him step by step. She patiently coaxed him like a child. "Take it slow, no need to rush." Luke Kenhuai refused to look at the road, his eyes were fixed on her face. He walked so slowly that it was almost like Lei walked step by step. "You have to watch the road." Non held back her laughter and reminded, but Luke Kenhuai shook his head. His voice was calm. "It doesn't matter where the road is. Just look at me." Non trembled slightly. She turned her face away, pretending not to hear, but her ears had turned red without her realizing it. After finishing his walking exercise, Luke Kenhuai obediently lay back on the bed. Non used a warm towel to wipe his face. He closed his eyes, enjoying each gentle touch. The corners of his lips curled up unconsciously. The big hand gently found her hand and held it tightly. A moment later, his voice rang out, low as the warm night wind. "When you get better, let's get married again." She paused, her hand holding the towel trembling slightly, and kissed again. She looked down at the man lying there, his eyes closed, his face peaceful like a beautiful dream, no longer cold and arrogant like before,
Only gentle sincerity remained that made her heart soften. But deep in her eyes, there was a vague worry. If one day he remembers everything, if one day the past memories come back, would he still want to hold her hand? That night, Ton Non sat by the bed, working on the computer. Luke Kenhoy had fallen asleep. Suddenly, he groaned softly in his sleep, covered in sweat. Ton Non hurriedly put down the phone and bent down to wipe his sweat. He held her hand tightly, repeating meaningless sentences. Don't leave me, don't trust them, just you. Ton Non gently stroked his hair, her voice gentle and coaxing. Be good, I'm here. A long while later, Luke Kenhoy calmed down, but his eyebrows were still furrowed. Ton Non sat quietly beside him, her heart filled with an indescribable sadness. Luke Kenhoy, the man who once single-handedly built an empire, who was once cold and fearless, was now so fragile when faced with the fear of losing her. Late at night, the night wind gently blew through the window. Ton Non sat there, quietly holding his hand, her eyes distant. She knew from this moment her heart could no longer turn back. No matter what lies ahead, whether it's a deep abyss or a storm, she will hold his hand tightly and walk the rest of the way together. That night, it rained, the rain pattering on the hospital's glass roof, like someone tapping each drop on the heart. Ton Non sat leaning against the chair, tightly holding the hand of the man sleeping soundly on the hospital bed. She did not dare to sleep deeply, afraid that he would have another nightmare like yesterday. Around 2 a.m., Luke Kenhoy started to stir. Sweat soaked through, eyebrows furrowed, pale lips moving wordlessly. Ton Non quickly squeezed his hand, pressing her lips against the back of his cold hand. I'm here, she whispered, but this time is different from usual. Luke Kenhoy could not calm down. He started to tremble violently, his face twisted in pain, his mouth uttered broken, intermittent words. Don't believe them. There is a traitor. Card explosion. Ton Non's blood is numb. These were no longer unconscious mutterings, but rather like long-suppressed memories struggling to rise from the depths of his mind. She frantically called the doctor. A moment later, the hospital's top neurologist arrived, his expression extremely serious. After examination, the patient showed signs of fragmentary memory recovery. But the process is very chaotic and can cause excruciating pain, he says. Ton Non clenched her hands. Is it dangerous? The doctor was pensive. No one is sure. If memories return incompletely, or if the memories are too painful, the patient may fall into a psychological crisis. Ton Non stood still in the hospital room. The dim light sank her in his shadows overlapping on the wall, like two unstable, elusive lines. If he remembered everything, would he still need her? The next morning, Luke Kenhoy woke up tiredly frowning. His eyes were still clear, but there was a faint trace of doubt. He looked at her. His fingers unconsciously searched for her hand, holding it tightly, but afraid that if he let go, everything would go up in smoke. Ton Non smiled gently. Do you want to eat anything? He didn't answer right away, just silently looked at her for a long time. So long that it felt like her heart was being torn in two. After a while, he asked softly, Non, have you ever hated me? Ton Non was stunned. She looked into those eyes that were once cold to the point of fear, now only contained pure unease. She shook her head. Never. The wind from the crack in the door crept in, bringing with it a cool chill. The two of them just silently held hands, as if the outside world no longer had anything to do with them. But that fragile peace did not last long. 3 days later, a strange woman appeared at the hospital room door. She wore a long gray dress, elegant appearance, delicate face, but cold eyes. In her hand, she held a file and a shining silver men's ring. I am Tio Ding, she smiled, her eyes stopping on Ton Non, carrying an undisguised assessment, Luke Kenhoy's official fiancé. The air in the room instantly froze. Ton Non clenched her fists, but her face remained surprisingly calm. She said lightly,
Sorry, you have the wrong person. Teoding smiled faintly and handed over a copy of the marriage contract. No mistake, she said. This is the agreement signed between my family and the Luke family. Tannan glanced at it. It was indeed a real contract. Date signed, location, attorney certified, everything complete. She turned her head to look at Luke Kinhoy. He was leaning against the headboard. His eyes were hazy. Perhaps because of those chaotic memories, he didn't react immediately, just blankly looking at the two women standing in front of him. Teoding took a step forward, her voice sweet but carrying hidden arrogance. He had an accident and temporarily can't remember, but it's okay. I'll help him recover. She turned to look at Tannan with a smirk, and she was just an outsider. Tannan smiled, her eyes still calm, but in her heart there were waves of undercurrent. Just an outsider. She clenched her hands under the hem of her skirt, hiding her emotions. At the moment Tai Ding was about to step closer to the hospital bed, Luke Kinhoy suddenly frowned. His eyes became cold as ice. He pulled Mang Tannan into his arms, his voice low but full of murderous intent. Who is she? The whole Pong was stunned. Teoding was stunned, unable to believe her eyes. Tannan stiffened and looked at the man who was hugging her tightly as if declaring his sovereignty in the world. Luke Kinhoy lowered his head to look at her, his eyes deep and determined like a rock. You are my wife. I don't know or need to know about other people. Tannan's heart trembled violently.
At that moment, she knew that even though his memories were vague, even though the world was upside down, he still chose her. Only after the tense meeting, Teoding did not leave. She rented a VIP room opposite Luck Kanwai's hospital room, citing convenience and taking care of him. Sunwon knew clearly that Xiaoying's purpose was not that simple, but she did not say anything. Like a little hedgehog, she retracted all her sharp thorns and silently faced the storm that was gradually approaching. In the morning, Tonan helped Luck Kanwai walk in the hospital hallway. The pale sunlight spread across the tiled floor, casting long shadows over two people. Luck Kanwai clung to her without letting go. Every step needed her guidance. Eyes like fear, just let go, the whole world will collapse. At that moment, Touting appeared. In her hand was a stack of old photos, including photos of Luck Kanwai and Touting walking together at social parties, family gatherings, and even fake engagement photos. Each photo is so delicately arranged that it seems to stab straight into the heart. Touting smiled, gently bringing a photo in front of Luck Kanwai. Do you remember this picture? Luck Kanwai frowned. He took the photo, his eyes darkened. The image before his eyes wavered. A sharp pain hit his head, like someone was using a hammer to hit it. He held his forehead, staggering slightly. Tonyan immediately supported him, her voice worried. What's wrong? Luck Kanwai closed his eyes tightly, his chest heaving. In the daze, fragments of memories passed by like ghosts, the sound of screeching wheels, the sound of metal colliding, an eternal promise left unsaid, and an unfamiliar smile amidst a sea of blood. The hand holding the photo dropped, the photo fell to the ground and slid several meters away. Tonyan squeezed his hand, her soft voice rang out, pulling him back to reality. Looking at me, Luck Kanwai, you are the real one. Amidst the painful chaos, he opened his eyes and met hers, eyes warm, steadfast, gentle like the only light in the darkness. The world was spinning, but her eyes were steady as a lighthouse. Luck Kanwai braced himself, pulling Tonyan sought into his embrace. His breathing was chaotic, but his voice was extremely certain, no matter what his memories were, as long as she was here. Touting stood not far away, her eyes gradually turning cold. She did not expect that even when her memories were in chaos, that man would still instinctively choose to stand on Tonyan's side. That evening, Tonyan sat by his hospital bed, holding his hand, softly telling him nonsense stories. She told about the day she first entered into a consensual marriage, The day he coldly signed the marriage papers, not even bothering to look up at her. She told about the lavish parties. She sat quietly in a corner watching him smile politely with other women. She told the story in a light voice, as if it were someone else's story. Luk Kan Hwai listened silently. He didn't say anything, just silently held her hand tighter, as if wanting to erase all those old wounds. After a long while, he hesitantly asked, "If I remember everything later, will you still stay?" Tonyan lowered her eyes. She smiled, but that smile was as bitter as tears. "If one day you don't need me anymore, I will leave by myself, but before then, I will stay by your side." Luk Kan Hwai pulled her into his arms, his hands shaking slightly. He was afraid that for the first time in his life, Luk Kan Hwai, a man who once looked down on heaven and earth, was afraid of something as simple as losing this woman. Late at night, Luk Kan Hwai had another nightmare. In his dream, he saw himself standing in a sea of fire, surrounded by screams. He ran and ran, but where he wanted to go, Tonyan was forever just a fading back. He shouted, "Don't go! Noan, you are wrong." Tonyan woke up with a start. She hugged him tightly, patting his back like she was coaxing a child. "I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." The cold night wind whistled through the crack in the door. But in that small embrace, Luk Kan Hwai found the only warmth that the whole world could not give him. 3 days after Touting appeared, the atmosphere in the hospital began to change. No longer the sweet peace as before. Instead, there was an invisible tension creeping between the looks, the hesitant words, and the increasingly intense dreams. In the morning, Tonyan took Luk Kan Hwai for a walk around the small garden in the hospital. The weather is mildly sunny. The first wind of the season carries the faint scent of flowers. It should have been a peaceful day, but her heart was weighed down with an unnamed unease. They sat down on a stone bench out of the wind. Luk Kan Hwai leaned his head on her shoulder, breathing gently. After a long while, he whispered, "Noan, do you trust me?" Tonyan was stunned. She turned to look at the man beside her. His eyes were hazy, as if covered with a thin layer of bone, mixed with anxiety and panic. "I believe," she answered immediately, without hesitation. But Luk Kan Hwai smiled faintly. Even he was not sure who he was. Tonyan held his hand, her voice gentle. No matter who he was before, as long as he was the Luk Kan Hwai of the present, the one who always held her hand. Luk Kan Hwai was silent for a long time. Something was surging in his heart, fierce and painful like an undercurrent. But in the end, he just squeezed her hand tightly, as if clinging to the only buoy in the middle of an inflatable pool. That afternoon, a small incident happened that caused Luk Kan Hwai's fragile faith to begin to waver. Tonyan went out to buy medicine for him, only absent for less than an hour. When she turned back, the sight before her eyes made her freeze. Touting was sitting by the hospital bed, holding a tablet in her hand and showing Luk Kan Hwai something. Blurry images flashed by, of 2 families signing a marriage contract, scenes of Luk Kan Hwai and Touting appearing together in front of the media. A short clip recording came Luk Kan Hwai signing the engagement contract. Luk Kan Hwai's eyes darkened. He propped himself up with his hands, his eyes filled with suspicion. Touting immediately took the opportunity, her voice sweet as money. "Brother, don't let unrelated people blur your memory. You are the one who is really with me from beginning to end." Tonyan clenched the medicine bag in her hand, her fingertips turning white. She knew what game Touting was playing. Hitting the messy memory, sowing doubt into the heart that is already full of cracks. Without saying a word, Tonyan walked in. Luk Kan Hwai saw her, his eyes complicated. He called out softly, "Tonyan." Tonyan smiled as if nothing happened. She walked over and gently took the tablet back from Touting's hand. "Turn it off," she said coldly. The tone was polite but distant.
Tao Ding looked at her, the corner of his lips curled up, his eyes flashed with hidden victory. That night, the atmosphere between Tonyan and Luk Ken Huai became strange. He still held her hand, still clung to her without letting go, but in his eyes there was a flicker of quiet confusion. Before going to sleep, he suddenly asked, "If I really had someone else before, would you hate me?" Tonyan stopped. Her heart felt like someone was squeezing it. She turned away, hiding her pained eyes. After a long while, she smiled. "No, because the person you love now is me." Luk Ken Huai squeezed her hand tightly. His breathing was rapid, as if he was fighting fiercely with himself. At midnight, he dreamed again. In his dream, chaotic images came back. There is touting, there are cold, lavish parties, there are calculating handshakes, and a night of bloody rain, and a small figure turning away. Alone in the rain, he jumped up, sweat pouring down his back. His eyes scanned the room in confusion, but did not see Tonyan. He called out in panic, "Tonyan, don't go." Tonyan heard and hurriedly ran out from the bathroom. She hugged him and comforted him. "I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." The cold night wind whistled through the crack in the door, but in that small embrace, Luk Ken Huai found the only warmth that the whole world could not give him.
The sky was gloomy, heavy clouds hovering as if wanting to swallow the whole city. The wind blew through the hospital corridor, cold enough to make one shiver. Tannoan pushed the door and entered the hospital room. In her hand was a bowl of hot porridge. Her eyes were gentle but hid a bit of silent fatigue. By the bed, Luk Ken Huai was still sitting with his back against the pillow, his eyes looking out the window. His eyes, which were usually filled with gentleness whenever he saw her, were now dark and frightening. Tannoan walked over and put the bowl of porridge on the table. "Eat some, it won't taste good if it gets cold." She spoke gently, but Luk Ken Huai did not move. He just stared at her, his eyes trying to see through her. After a long while, he spoke in a hoarse voice. Noan, is there anything you're hiding from me?" So Noan paused, her fingers tightly gripping the small spoon. "No." She tried to smile, but her voice had lost its naturalness. Lu Jinhuai laughed, a low laugh carrying a hint of bitterness. He had remembered a little. He said, his eyes still not leaving her. "That accident wasn't an accident." The air in the room seemed to thicken. So Noan felt as if someone was squeezing her heart. He continued, each word cutting into her heart like a knife. It was a murder, a trap. Outside the window, thunder boomed. So Noan clenched her fists, her head buzzing. Lu Jinhuai propped himself up with his hands, his face pale but his eyes cold. The person behind probably didn't just want to kill him, but also wanted to take everything he had. So Noan clenched her fists, raising her head to meet his eyes. "Can you remember who did it?" Her voice was low and trembling, shaking. Luk Ken Huai shook his head. "Not yet." His eyes darkened, but he clearly remembered that night he was on his way to find her. Tandoan was stunned. "What? You want to give me the ring?" He spoke slowly, his voice low, wanting to officially propose to her. Tandoan's whole body seemed to be frozen. A second later, tears welled up in the corners of her eyes uncontrollably. If he hadn't had an accident that night, if he had arrived on time that night, maybe things would have been completely different. But fate always likes to tease people. It threw them into a cruel joke. Luk Ken Huai reached out to wipe away the tears on her cheeks. The movement was so gentle that it made her heart ache. "Don't cry," he whispered. She nodded and smiled, but tears still flowed. Just then there was a knock at the door. Tio Ding appeared, holding a file in her hand. Her eyes flashed with coldness when she saw the scene before her. "Sorry to bother you." She smiled sweetly, but there was a knife in her smile. "I just want to give Mr. Luck some documents. Maybe it will help him remember faster." Tannoan stepped forward and blocked the hospital bed. "No need." Her voice was soft but firm. Tio Ding curled her lips. Was she afraid that he would remember and not choose her anymore? So no one stiffened. Luke Kenhui frowned, holding her hand tightly. I don't need those things. I only need no one. The air in the room instantly froze. Tio Ding clenched the file in her hand, her nails digging into the hardcover, but she quickly regained her composure. She walked over, placed the file on the table, and smiled. It's okay, Mr. Luck. Whenever you want it, it's still here. Tio Ding turned away, her high heels clicking on the stone floor. Tun No-won clenched her hands. She knew things wouldn't end that easily. That evening, Luke Kenhui sat by the window, his eyes distant. Tun No-won sat next to him and quietly made him a cup of herbal tea. She handed him a cup of tea, sat down next to him. No one said anything, only the sound of rain falling outside the window. After a long while, Luke Kenhui whispered, "If one day I remember everything and if the truth hurts you, would you still want to be with me?" Tun No-won did not answer immediately. She clenched her hands around the warm cup of tea. That warm temperature, no matter how hard she tried, could not dispel the cold in her heart. Finally, she raised her head, her eyes determined. No matter what, she chose to stay. Her voice was as light as the wind, but each word carried more weight than a confession. Luke Kenhui pulled her into his arms, burying his face in her neck. She felt his shoulders tremble slightly, as if he was too tired, had suffered too much pain, and only she was left, the last safe haven he could rely on. That night, amidst the sound of rain falling, two people hugged each other tightly, as if they let go just a little bit, they would lose everything. Outside the glass door, the sky was pitch black with lightning flashing across it, like a warning that the storm was still ahead. It was a rainy night. The wind blew through the hospital corridor, carrying a cold breath. In the quiet room, Luke Kenhui lay on the hospital bed, his eyes furrowed, his hands tightly gripping the white bedsheet, the pressure coming again. But this time, unlike the previous times, in the dream, every image appeared as clear as slow motion. He found himself leaving the family party, rushing out into the rain, his hand clutching the exquisite ring box, the ring engraved with Miss Tun No-won's name. I clearly remember the feeling in that moment, eager, expectant, and in love. The car sped away in the rain. He did not realize that the container in front was not an accident. The wheels were deliberately turned, the streetlights were unusually dark. A fatal collision. He heard a deafening explosion, a perfectly orchestrated trap to take his life. In the last moment before he passed out, he saw a figure standing hidden in the rain, eyes cold as ice, a cruel smile. None other than Tio Ding. Luke Kenhui woke up, cold sweat soaked his temples. His breathing was rapid, as if he had just swum out of the bottom of an abyss. Tun No-won woke up with a start. She quickly rushed to hug him. "What's wrong?" Luke Kenhui hugged him like a drowning man finding the last blade of grass. His hoarse voice carried an unprecedented anger. "I remember." Tun No-won was stunned. She gently stroked his back, waiting for him to continue. A moment later, Luke Kenhui withdrew from her arms, his deep black eyes flashing with an icy cold light. "The accident," he whispered, "was a conspiracy, and Tio Ding was the one behind it." Tun No-won felt like he had been hit hard. Even though I had a vague feeling in my heart, hearing him confirm it with his own mouth still hurt so much my heart ached. "Since when did you know?" Luke Kenhui asked, his eyes complicated. So No-won lowered her head. From the first time she came here, she smiled faintly. "But I don't have evidence. I'm afraid if I say it, you won't believe me." Luke Kenhui clenched his hands. He hated himself for leaving her alone to face danger all this time, for letting her suffer it all in silence. "I'm sorry," he hoarsely said. So No-won shook his head. "No need to apologize," she said softly. "I just need you to be safe." Luke Kenhui's eyes were red. He pulled her into his arms, hugging her so tightly that she could barely breathe. "So No-won, I swear from now on, I will protect you, even if I have to lose everything."
That night, Luke Kanhwai did not sleep. He held Sonoan in his arms, quietly outlining a plan. The next morning, he asked Assistant Lee to investigate everything related to Xiao Ying. The dense information network was quickly deployed. It only took half a day for all the dirty secrets to be exposed. Xiao Ying, his fiancée on the contract, had actually colluded with Luke Kanhwai's opponent. They plotted to harm him and take over the Lu Group. The accident on the rainy night was just the first step. Luke Kanhwai sat on the bed, his hand stroking Sonoan's finger. That slender finger had silently protected him many times without him knowing. He raised his head, his eyes cold as ice. It was time to end this game. Sonoan was worried he had not fully recovered. Don't take any risks. Luke Kanhwai chuckled softly, stroking her hair. I'm not afraid because you're by my side. That afternoon, Luke Kanhwai asked to meet Tio Ding in a small conference room in the hospital, without notice, without preparation, a life-and-death confrontation. Tio Ding appeared with the same arrogant appearance as always. She did not know that Luke Kanhwai had remembered everything. He sat on the chair, Sonoan's hand clasped tightly in his eyes cold as he looked at the woman in front of him. Miss Ding, the game should be over.
Xiao Ying is a human being. A second later, she burst out laughing. What are you talking about? Luke Kanhwai lifted the thick file on the table. Inside is evidence of shady money transfers, secret calls, and even secret contracts between the Tiao family and his rivals. Enough to put her in jail for life, he said coldly. Tiao Ding's face was pale. She took a step back, trembling. I have no direct evidence. Luke Kanhwai curled his lips. Evidence? He took out a small USB. On the night of the accident, a nearby traffic camera recorded her standing in the rain, holding a walkie-talkie, directing the container truck. Tiao Ging fell down on the chair, her face pale. The whole room was silent. Only the sound of rain outside hitting the glass door could be heard. Tao Nuan held Luke Kanhwai's hand tightly. She knew that at this moment he had truly returned. There was no more doubt, no more hesitation. There was only him, steadfast as a mountain, and her, the only peaceful place he was willing to keep for the rest of his life. A week after the truth was revealed, Tio Ding was officially arrested. All dark plots were exposed. Luke Kanhwai was also declared fully recovered with no risk of brain injury. Everything seemed to have finally settled down, but for Luke Kanhwai, there was only one thing left unfinished, something he has been thinking about for a long time. That day, the sky was clear and rare. Soft yellow sunlight spread across the hospital corridor. Tao Nuan is packing his things to prepare for his discharge from the hospital. She lowered her head to fold her clothes and muttered, "You have as much stuff as moving house." Suddenly, a small velvet box was gently placed in front of her. Tao Nuan was stunned, raised his head to face Luke Kanhwai's deep and serious eyes. He knelt on one knee on the cold ground. In his hand, the velvet box opened, revealing a simple platinum ring. Inside, engraved with the only words, Tao Nuan. His voice was hoarse, but every word was as firm as a rock. Tao Nuan, I love you. Not because of someone else's arrangement, not because of the contract, not for any other reason, simply because you are you. A gentle breeze blew by, carrying the faint scent of jasmine. The whole world seemed to fall silent, except for the sound of her heart beating wildly. Tao Nuan covered her mouth, tears rolling down uncontrollably. She nodded continuously, crying and laughing at the same time. I agree. Luke Kanhwai squeezed her hand. His eyes, for the first time in his life, were filled with a gentleness that could melt even ice. The ring was placed on her ring finger, fitting just like they were, no matter how big the circle, no matter how painful, still fit together perfectly in the end. 3 days later, a small wedding ceremony took place in the small garden of the suburban villa. There was no lavish party, no noisy media, just sunshine, wind, white flowers blooming everywhere, and the people they truly loved. Tao Nuan wore a pure white cutout dress, simple but breathtakingly beautiful. Beside her, Luke Kanhwai in a finely tailored black suit. His eyes never left her for even a second. Amidst the gentle music, amidst the sporadically but sincerely clapping, he held her hand, step by step, walking towards the officiant. no need for fancy vows. Simply when it was her turn, Tao Nawan looked up, her eyes shining. I wish too. The platinum ring sparkled in the sunlight. The whole world seemed to hold its breath, witnessing the moment the two exchanged their first kiss of a new life. The kiss was not passionate, just a very light touch, but carried all the love, pain, and hope of the past days. When their lips left, Lukkan Hawaii lowered his head, leaned his forehead against hers, his voice as soft as the wind. I don't need the world, I just need you. Tao Nawan laughed through tears. You are so greedy. Yes. He nodded and said he would be greedy all his life. After the wedding, they sat next to each other under the cherry blossom tree, watching the warm orange afternoon sky. Neither of them said anything, just silently holding hands. A moment later, Lukkan Hawaii tilted his head to look at her, his eyes smiling softly. Nawan Nawan, let's get a dog in the future. Tao Nawan laughed. Yes, raise a dog and take care of a flower garden. Oh, he looked at her, his voice warm. Please have a baby like me. Sunawan's face turned red. She tapped him lightly on the shoulder. Don't daydream. Lukkan Hawaii laughed and hugged her. Amidst the rustling wind and the bright sunlight, his voice rang out, low but filled with gentleness. This life is so smooth. I only wish one thing, that every time I turn around, the person I see will always be you. The wind carried the sweet scent of flowers. The sun set below the horizon, leaving behind an endless strip of warm light. Just like their story, no need for flashiness, no need for brilliance, just need to be together forever.